So yeah, let's talk about starting up in Web3. So the opportunities are massive, and I want to dig into why. The landscape is pretty challenging, and you're going to run into all kinds of problems as you get going and you start building, and there's a ton of complexity and so on. And the good news is that we're here to help. So this is one of the most open and collaborative industries on the planet, maybe the most open and collaborative industry on the planet. And this is a really an amazing space where you can lean on so many other people that will just help you figure all kinds of problems out. And so almost no matter what challenge you're gonna encounter, you can find somebody in the community that's going to be not only able to help you, but super willing and happy to help you. So big opportunities. Hey, there's gonna be a bunch of challenges. Don't worry about it. We're here to help. I wanted to just give a quick description of why Web3 matters in a larger context. I find it useful to always reflect on this because it's very easy to get caught up on the kind of normal stuff that is happening day to day, or the current projects and so on. And it's very useful to kind of keep a north star on where the whole movement is going and why at the end of the day these platforms end up mattering so much. So you can think of Web3 as the next evolution of the internet, and it's good to step back and reflect that in just 80 years, computing has radically transformed humanity. So today we have superpowers. You and I can lean on superpowers that our parents and grandparents and ancestors would have never imagined. And just the fact that we're communicating live right now through this entire just computational medium is amazing. And so we're just a different species already than we were maybe even just 80 years ago. And this change is accelerating. So just keep that in mind. Now, in this integrated computing environment with humans and just silicon computers and so on and robots, this is just connecting billions of people and trillions of devices, and we're learning new and better ways of organizing ourselves. And actually, I should update a slide. It also includes probably millions, maybe billions of organizations, and now DAOs and other kinds of entities. So this like highly integrated world brain, so to speak, is functioning through this computational medium. And every year, more and more stuff gets integrated. And most of our activity now is riding through the internet pipes, and all of these different applications give us superpowers. And one of my favorite things about the internet is that an individual or a small group of people can get together, design a thing, design a superpower, write some software, design some really good product interfaces, bundle it up, and deploy it to everybody around the world effectively for free. And that's just an amazing environment that yields all kinds of permissionless innovation and just this super fast-paced growth of possibilities, and this broad-based deployment of these superpowers. Now, there's a lot of people around the world that don't yet have access to these amazing superpowers, and that's an important problem to solve, and go out there and increase access. And you can also go and deploy some new amazing superpower and kind of upgrade the whole species. And the thing to keep in mind is that this change is accelerating, and it's gonna go through a lot of different kind of interfaces that are going to change us even more. So augmented reality, virtual reality, brain-computer interfaces, robotics, AI and AGI, and so on, are coming in the next decades. And each one of those things will just convolve with everything that's on there right now, and again change our experiences and how we work and how we integrate and how we collaborate and so on. So we're on this like super fast-paced technological evolution curve now, and just stay it's like a way that you have to surf. And one of the really important things here is, for every single one of these technologies, it's really important that they go well, and that we aim for really good outcomes for tons of people around the planet, and they don't kind of yield a lot of powers for groups that will kind of abuse that power or in kind of like this very lopsided centralized way where that kind of yields control, or some kind of way that just massively advantages one group as opposed to everybody. So keep on work on building technologies that kind of aim for as many good outcomes as we can, and it's going to be pretty important to just set yourself up so that you can do that. And so one thing that I like doing is kind of it's so difficult to think about time and how quick technology changes that it's good to kind of put it on a graph like this, so that you can just look back 80 years and then think 80 years ahead and just kind of get a sense of just how much things are going to change over the coming decades, because it's just so easy to lose sight of how quickly everything's changing. Great, so back to Web3. So how does this all affect Web3? As the next evolution of this amazing platform for deploying superpowers, what Web3 is doing at the end of the day is that it's adding verifiability to the network, and it's making the read-write web of Web2 a thing that you can trust, because you have the ability to check correctness or create structures that just reduce the level of individual trust that you might have on an entity. And so by building kind of an anti-fragile system, you can now trust the system, trust the system itself because of its verifiability. And so that's at the end of the day the core primitive that's being added, and it's rewiring all kinds of things to just work in a more trustless way. These are some of the principles. A couple of years ago, I tried to kind of write down some of the principles of Web3 and some set of values. This is just one stab at it. I think a lot of people might add or disagree with some of these. I recommend, in the spirit of Web3, make your own list and put it out there, and let's borrow from each other. Usually these values map to a specific set of technologies that you can think of as achieving that value. And it's cool to reflect on just how much is happening in Web3. It's still pretty small relative to Web2 and relative to the amount of users that kind of global platforms have, especially social networks and so on. But there's just tons of projects and tons of applications developing, and so Web3 is changing all kinds of things around the world already. So Protocols is a group that is kind of working on this tech, and we're organized in a way that lets us work on a number of different projects, and we are very open source oriented. We try to build things in a way that kind of are community oriented and trying to just make everything super permissionless for everybody to work on. And so what I kind of wanted to share is some lessons that we've learned along the way in building our projects, and also in how we can potentially be helpful to you along the way. So just for background, we work on things like Liquid2P, IPFS, Filecoin, and so on. Great, so back to the key messages. So let's dive into the opportunities being massive, right? So at the core of it is the software is eating law. And when software eats law, that means contracts, all kinds of arrangements. Law underpins government, so all of that is getting bundled into software. All financial transactions are flowing into this. So we end up in a we end up in a world where every single thing that you can represent in a normal legal contract or legal agreement is now up for grabs in terms of software, and that changes the transaction costs. It changes the deployment structures. That changes the runtime execution environment. Like right now, you have code now checking this. So it means that so much about how humans operate is going to be eaten by Web3, and it's sort of this matter of time thing. It's a matter of time given a large and robust developer community and builder community that is going to go out and make these things. But you can just sort of see this happening in waves. You'll see that every 2-3 years, just entirely new ranges of applications will come online that could just kind of keep on knocking sets of industries and so on. And over time, I feel like what this is sort of doing is it's creating this internet jurisdiction where an internet native worldwide jurisdiction where you can build contracts, you can build organizations, you can govern, and so on. And there's so much that we have to do to figure this out and figure out how it works and how it interfaces with traditional governments, and how it interfaces with and how to preserve rights for people and so on. Like we have no good notion of courts yet, as an example. but it's a super exciting environment. And it's also really amazing that it's trivially easy to deploy and operate whole new mechanisms, new contracting mechanisms, different financial instruments, incentive structures, governance systems, trustless businesses. All of this kind of stuff is super simple to deploy. You just have to design it, construct the contracts, and then ship them. Now, there's a whole bunch of change management that you have to worry about, but the fact that it's that easy and that it's that permissionless, and that you don't have to kind of convince a large group of parties to try something new is incredibly promising. So we live in an environment where a group could decide to create something like UBI and try it out and build it and deploy it, and now it's live. Like, you don't have to go and convince all sorts of governments and so on that this is a good idea, or that we should try it, or that we should learn. And so it just puts us on a place where we can experiment a lot, and we can learn from those experiments, and we can feed that back in itself and improve all these systems, and kind of get away from this kind of stifled innovation environment where you can't easily create new countries, you can't easily create new economic structures, you can't like solve the ills of the current economic structures, because the innovation of that is just so locked down. But in this environment, you can, and you can go and try things out, and if they work at scale, then they'll blow up pretty quickly, right? And so you can tinker with all of these mechanisms and instruments and so on, deploy them into the network, and if they really work, then they'll scale. And that's a pretty amazing contribution. And all of this is super open and permissionless. It's international. It's all kind of remote first. And so this is really the internet coming into its own. All the kind of waves of innovation in the past and in the development of the internet were kind of pale in comparison to this level of permissionless innovation, remote first, shared innovation, and so on. So this is part of what makes it so fast and promising and massive. It's because so many people around the planet are coming up with new things and convolving them with each other. And so that's one other component. Part of why the opportunities are massive here is that everybody's building composable primitives. Everybody's building smaller and smaller things that have broader applicability and kind of are more robust components that then get pieced together into larger and larger solutions. And this is, one of the big successes of all of the DeFi world is that composability. The fact that you can compose these things and people can use them in ways that you didn't predict, or that maybe you predicted, but you just didn't have time to build. So many projects out there get stuck on, these like super long roadmaps that are hard to make it through, because, as a team, you're limited in what you can do and so on. And so if you make composable things, then whoever wants to use it can go and kind of build the next thing and so on. So if you focus on composability, and then you're gonna build a much stronger thing that many people can build on, and that will feed into kind of this explosive innovation, because you'll make a thing that builds on other people's things, then now people can go and convolve your thing with whatever they were building or the new things that they might be building. And so this kind of constant combination and compounding of innovation is part of what's making Web3 move at a super accelerated pace. I'm very I've studied a lot of kind of technological revolutions and so on, and I've been in the crypto space for a long time, like basically since early 2010, 11 is when I first heard about Bitcoin and so on. And just every year I get more impressed by how fast and how much more there is. Like, the rabbit hole goes super deep, and there's more and more and more stuff every year. And so the pace at which we're going is pretty breathtaking. And so many things that were kind of really important 2 years ago are suddenly totally replaced by new constructions and so on. So, I really encourage you to be nimble and figure out how to build composable primitives and keep surfing the wave. This is examples of the DeFi explosion and so on. Even in Filecoin, we're thinking about these composable primitives, this none of this has happened yet, and it's kind of around the corner. It's later this year, people will go out and build all these things, and so on. And yeah, one of the other cool things to see is these ecosystems can ramp up super quickly. You deploy an incentive structure into the network, and suddenly tons of people come out of nowhere to be part of these systems and grow a massive amount of scale super fast. So what's happening in just the Filecoin mining ecosystem is breathtaking. Like just exabytes of storage appearing out of in a super fast speed that no cloud has ever assembled this much storage this fast. And tons of new applications and systems and so on being built and experimented on and so on. So it's tons of explosion. And so all of this is gonna go even faster as new networks deploy, like new layer 1s and layer 2s and so on, as we get just much faster transaction throughputs, as we kind of connect all these networks with chains and so on, so bridges and so on. And so think of like all of the composability across all of these things that people are building as just kind of amplifying and magnifying over time. Now, of course, it's all kind of complex, and we'll get to that in a moment. So the challenges, opportunities are massive, but this is a pretty challenging environment. So there's just a ton of complexity. Stuff is happening all the time, all over the place, and it's just difficult to keep up with the information flow, what everybody's doing, and so on. So just try to do your best to stay abreast of what's going on, but also kind of focus on your thing and deploy again your composable primitive and move on from there. So this is pretty complex software when you deploy. So the contracts themselves and the mechanisms and so on might be small, but when you think of those pieces composing with other things, that just the complexity blows up, and we don't have good tools to analyze this stuff or to reason about how these things are going to work once you kind of put together. So this is in great need of new tools and so on to reason about how to build and deploy the software. But yeah, so you'll have, for now, while we don't have those tools, you'll have to navigate this individually, and you'll have to navigate this by just applying very good software design principles and software engineering principles around managing the deployment of these things and kind of reasoning about the potential problems. Thankfully, we've learned a lot now from all the exploits of the last decade. So now teams are just a lot better at deploying much safer software than we used to. This also yields complex products. It's just difficult to use all of these components, and it just gives users this tons of opportunities and flexibility and so on, which is difficult to learn. And so part of what's going on with Web3 and why it's difficult, not that many people around the planet are really using Web3 yet, is because of this complexity of the product. You have like layers and layers of power users. Like you don't have power users and then kind of broader base consumers. No, it's like a large gradient with many different groups that understand deeper and deeper notions of complexity. And so you see this show up in like wallets and in even like you jump into things like Decentraland and crypto voxels, and there's just a lot of crypto native complexity there that just makes the systems hard to access for a lot of other people. And so that means it's a lot of product challenges for us to figure out how to make all of these things more learnable, more accessible, and so on. But it's not about hiding the primitives; it's about making the primitives easy to use and easy to learn, and so on. But this just makes the products harder to build. And then on top of that, you're building economies and deploying economies. So all the mechanisms that you're building, you have to reason about how those are going to yield different types of behaviors and groups and so on. And you have to worry about exploits, and you have to worry about how to align incentives and all that kind of stuff. So as you build these things, you're now worrying about economic design, which just adds this whole other layer of complexity to the picture. Then you're dealing with potentially building organizations that have never been built before, directly on chain or in groups and so on. So this just adds yet another layer of complexity where you have to now not only reason about the complexity of your software, your product, the economy that you're building, but also the organizations that you're creating, and sometimes implicit organizations that you didn't think were there because your economic structure yielded some kind of group that now is all sort of aligned in one sense, and like that's sort of an implicit organization that becomes explicit pretty quickly. So you have to think about managing these organizations and so on. And there's also just super complex regulatory landscape because all of this stuff is new, and we're software seeding law and finance, and so that just is a complex thing to navigate, and it's international first. So there's no single kind of regulatory space. You have to worry about a lot of them, and so that just adds a lot of complexity and it's just kind of hurdles that teams have to kind of reason about and worry about as they're building. And then after you've handled all of these hurdles, you now have to distribute to users. And Web3 stuff is unfortunately hard to distribute because all the traditional app stores want people to use their their kind of distribution flow. So mobile and kind of infamously, I guess, Apple and others were kind of like banning all kinds of things related to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or it's just the deployment pathway is really, really difficult. Also, the web we're dealing with many new kinds of protocols, so the distribution into browsers is difficult. So this just gives a whole other hurdle of making these products accessible to a lot of people. Just being able to get them to users in a traditional, simple way is a hurdle. So, a bunch of complexity. However, it's also manageable. And just remember that like the space is moving blazingly fast. And this is both a benefit and a curse, because a lot of things are changing quickly, but it's also kind of a curse because you might be working on a thing and by the time you're done with it, it might be irrelevant because some other thing has now emerged and replaced it, or you're building a thing and suddenly this other new thing could have saved you tons of work. So yeah, keep abreast of the information. You're also dealing with an environment with like super volatile markets, and like that's difficult for organizations to deal with. We're constantly having to blaze new trails. There's not a lot of organizations you can point to and say, oh yeah, we'll just kind of do things the way that group did them. Kind of like the Web2 world, this was very common. Here it's just much harder with this innovation and complexity. Just you end up with so many new trails and whatnot. And so over time, there aren't a lot of good guides or best practices, but these are starting to get built, and this is something that I encourage the community to invest in and build. It's just better guides for how to get going. And then open source is an amazing environment, has lots of amazing good things. There's also some bad things about working in kind of super public environments and so on. It just makes innovation more difficult. And then now you can involve that with money, and like that just creates all kinds of complex incentives. And so like that's also a challenge you'll have to reason about. And there's trolls and public problems and whatnot. Now the good news is that, as again, the opportunities are massive. It is challenging, but don't worry, because the whole community is here to help. So this is again one of the most open, permissionless, and friendly communities and industries ever assembled. And there's just this amazing spirit of shared innovation and shared building of everybody's kind of trying. Like the principles of the movement are to kind of build these composable primitives for more people to work together through. And that's just a phenomenal thing to be a part of and to lean on. Like you as a new builder can lean on all these other groups that have built things before, and you can ask questions, you can get answers, you can get help, you can get support, you can get funding, you can get all kinds of things that can help you get going. And all you have to do is ask. You just have to find groups that understand what you're up to and can help you, and you can just ask for help. And we're here. We'll help you. Everyone's super busy. Everyone has a ton of things to do, and yet we can all still take time to help others out and kind of pay it forward for the people that helped us. And I encourage you to find communities where you can do that. So a lot of this is on Discord and on different Slacks and Matrix and on different kind of environments like that. So you just hop on those channels if you aren't already, participate, and over time kind of ask for help as you run bombs. And yeah, so there's a lot of resources that are getting developed and you can lean on. And there's a bunch of organizations also that are making it an explicit goal to help others get started. And PL is one of those orgs. There's the Ethereum Foundation is another one that has just for many years been helping a lot of other groups get started. There's a bunch of other orgs around that are super helpful. ETH Global is a phenomenal organization that has just for years now been the best pathway for helping developers enter into the Ethereum community and the broader Web3 landscape, and just making it way easier to understand how to build things, creating opportunities for people to get going and hack. Can't wait for all of us to get together again in a hackathon. And speaking of that, really use hackathons to get started. This is like a great environment to learn a lot, try things out, build the thing, see if it works, meet other people, see what other people are doing, and just kind of get inspired to build together. And you'll just, I think, getting into the practice of hacking frequently and often is just like a good thing to do. And again, support very open and collaborative communities, lean on others, ask for help. And everybody who's building something today that you can point to and kind of recognize and so on, got a lot of help from other people before. And everybody's always very good about paying it forward. So you just again, they might be rate limited with time and so on, but you can usually find somebody who will be able to have the bandwidth to give you advice and support and so on. And there's also a ton of funding for groups that are building new things. So there's everything from grants to investments to whole accelerator programs now focusing on Web3. And so as you build things, so you have this mindset of, hey, it's super cheap and easy to build things. You can try things out in a hackathon. If one of these things has legs, you can maybe get some grants to get going and start building a thing, and then over time feed that into an accelerator or something else. And one of the really awesome things here is that unlike the Web2 space or the first web space, most of the things being built don't have to be kind of like the traditional company structure. You can build DAOs, you can build protocols, you can build tools and say, hey, this is just a tool I'm building, I need a grant for it, and then I'm done and I move on to something else. And that's possible in this environment in ways that the Web2 world never really allowed. And so there's just this habit of the community funding really good things that are valuable to everybody in a way that you don't have to attach it to a company or a business or something like that. So just really think about building valuable, useful things that people want to use, and there will be people around that if it's useful to them, they'll help you build it, and they'll help support you. Sometimes we'll join you and build it with you, and sometimes they'll be able to fund it. So yeah, think of like this kind of like pathway of resources, hackathons, accelerators, and kind of grants and investors, depending on whether you're building a business or not. And really lean up, find the right fit for the thing you're building. Like many things should not be businesses, and in the Web2 world, they kind of turn into businesses. And we have a bunch of things that weren't supposed to be businesses, became businesses, and now like all the incentives are wonky. And so really encourage you to form a business when it makes sense, or find some other funding structure when that makes sense. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities throughout the year and next year and so on. So you can use it to build things. One quick plug for how to reason about layer one economies. Think of them as kind of like export economies, where like a whole group of people are aligned to participate in one way. And you can think of kind of joining that community, and that community kind of all being aligned to help each other and support each other. And you're kind of like a city state in a sense that's transacting in some kind of way, and creating some value, creating some service that you're now exporting to the rest of the world. In fact, when we think of this as like we're building the kind of like city state that is providing commoditized digital storage for the world, and kind of like thinking about how to export that out to the rest of the world. Great. So yeah, grants and accelerators. You can talk to us if you need any help with this, and you want resources. A bunch of us will be around kind of through the hackathon, and reach out. You can message us here by email, but you can find me on Filecoin Slack, and I'm also on Discord under the same username. But I'm on it less because the spam is just higher for me. But yeah, if I can be helpful, don't worry, reach out. And it may take me a while to respond, but I'll get to it eventually. And you can reach out to any folks from PL or Filecoin or IPFS and any other communities that we're building, and we'll try to help as much as you can. And we're also starting to do these things of like providing office hours for some teams. Like if your team is kind of building a thing and we can be especially helpful, then maybe we can give you some office hours for you to ask questions from us and so on. So maybe if this is of interest, after the hackathon, if you want to kind of pursue the thing you're building, let us know, and maybe we can figure some way to actively help you more. Cool. That's it. Thank you so much.